Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Mind the Mental Monday. It is a Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Monday. We are celebrating the life and legacy of our drum major for justice, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I can't think of a more befitting time to talk about the drum major for justice, but I want to talk tonight from the perspective of what he and others in the civil rights and other movements may have gone through from a mental health perspective. And I think very often we think about, we see all of the footage of the water hoses and the dogs being released on people and the police officers just beating people with billy clubs, for just exercising basic rights. And we see all of the physical torment and sort of terrorism that people, African Americans in particular, faced during those times, but we don't often talk about what types of things they must have done to sort of fortify their mental their to get their to strengthen their mental fortitude to face such hatred and challenge um in order to have the desire to have a better outcomes for future generations. Because I think that a lot of them who were fighting during the civil rights movement, which I was born in at the end, kind of the end of it in 1968. I was a fetus, I think, when Dr. King was assassinated, and so I really only have memory of what I learned, what I saw in movies and documentaries, and what my parents taught me, and that sort of thing about what they faced during the movement. And my dad was a part of the civil rights movement in Baltimore, Maryland. He and and moving forward, he continued to be a voice for the voiceless. He was a social justice advocate. He held the politicians' feet to the fire. He himself ran for political office when I was just about, I don't know how old I was. I want to think I was maybe around 10, 11 years old or something like that. Um, and, I remember being on the campaign trail with him and how much fun that was. But it was about so much more than himself. It was always about being a voice for the voiceless, for those who didn't feel like they had the kind of power in their voice to speak up toward justice. So tonight, I want to kind of talk from the perspective of the intersection between social justice and mental health, because while we are even now having to sort of revisit a lot of what it's like the same thing is happening now with this new regime, uh, or this regime that is our American political system right now. They're doing the same kinds of lawless things that were done back during the civil rights movement. And so, and many of us who are here today don't really don't know how our ancestors, how our forefathers were able to brave such vitriol and such hatred and violence and terrorism, and still be able to build institutions. And it's like they were our ancestors. I feel like we're made strong, and they were just made with something else, but they also, that was, they were used to that way of life. And in Generation X, which is my generation, we were that first generation out of the civil rights movement and the civil rights era. We were the first to you know, go to non-segregated schools. And even though it was supposed to be non-segregated, I certainly went to all segregated schools. My whole, I literally didn't go to school with non-African Americans until graduate school. So that tells you something, because I'm from Baltimore, which is a very segregated city, like many cities in the United States. And we really didn't have any reason to have any dealings with anybody else except, all of our business transactions and things happen within the community. Yeah, and so just because legally segregation was over didn't really mean that it was really over, right? Like, even though the high school I went to was segregated, within the school, it was still pretty much segregated. Like people mostly kind of hung with their group. Um, and so even though I went to high school with people from different racial backgrounds, we didn't really intermingle with each other like that during at that time. And so we are not used to, we're used to kind of being able to just do what we want to do and go where we want to go, shop where we want to shop and all of those types of things, go to the schools that we want to go to. And now we're sort of being thrust back into a situation where all of that like trying to be reversed. And so what is the mental fortitude that our ancestors had as they were going through the levels of fight that they had just for just basic human rights. And how, where do we get that in our generation? Because we're going to need it. We need it. It's not even a we're going to. It's like this is all happening like right now. And when you start to read and start to see, understand how fascism happens, how a Hitler happens, how other sort of genocidal, hate-filled people come into power, we have to be, we've got to wake up. And we have to be intentional about banding together and standing up to what is happening right now. Because if we don't, people are afraid. And yes, even Dr. King was fearful, but there was something in them. There was something inside of them that said, I know that I'm literally putting my life on the line, but it's worth it. It's worth it for my children. It's worth it for my grandchildren. It's worth it for my great grandchildren. They weren't even really thinking about themselves. They were thinking about the generations to come after them. And that is the place where we have to be today, as difficult as that might be. And as mentally challenging as it might be, it is where we are. And so it is no accident that every day we wake up and there's some other just foolishness happening, right? At the from our leaders in this country. If it's like starting just little fires everywhere, little sparks, all over the world, and in the country, that it's Greenland, and then it's Minnesota, and then it's California, and then it's it's just it's a tactic, right? It is a tactic to get us all distracted. There on social media, there is rage bait that is intentional. Those algorithms that are being pushed, that are pushing rage bait out to masses of people in order to get everybody up in an uproar and to get everybody fighting each other, when there's a very small group of people who are controlling everything. That is divide and conquer, is a tactic, is a strategy that has been used for decades, millennia even, right? What's the best way to get your enemy um is to make people just kind of go against each other. So that is what's happening. And we have to not fall for it. We have to, rather than fall for it, we have to stand up to it. And we have to speak truth to power. We cannot allow, just other people's narratives to be able to shape our future. We have to develop our own narratives because if we don't, then we are at the whim of those who are in so-called power, right? So I want to just talk a little bit. I, I like to try to give some practicality. And this really came out of not only just wanting to honor the life and legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I really, this past Saturday, our church had a prayer, Martin Luther King Jr. prayer breakfast where we played some of his clips and we prayed for, justice and peace. Um, and we prayed with intentionality. We had a guest preacher who came and preached a message about keep moving, that we cannot, because one of the things that is the desire of this kind of regime that is happening right now in the United States is the desire to just make people feel hopeless. And the more hopeless you feel or become, the less you are willing to fight, the less you are strengthened to stand in your resolve and go head to head against the enemy. And so we must pull together, but in order to do that, and because there's way more of us than there is the oligarchy that is trying to run this country right now. And so that's the first thing, is that we have to realize that we are not a minority. And there's always these terms used to call certain people minorities, but um, numerically, we're not minorities. Maybe in this country for now, and for maybe in another 4 or 5 years, that's not going to be the case, which is where the fear is coming from, right? So we have to be aware. We have to educate ourselves. We have to be literate, because the other thing that they're doing is going after our education systems and kind of, I don't want to say dumbing down, but there's not a desire for people to educate themselves. And it's like our brains are becoming kind of like mush. We have to know our history. We have to learn it. We have to know what our forefathers, um, what they went through, what they withstood, in times like these, so that we can know that the resolve to stand, for justice is in our DNA. And it takes all of us, not just a few working on behalf of the masses, but everybody, because we all benefit, not just like African Americans. Like, I mean, everybody benefits when we are all free to vote, free to speak our minds, speak free, um, to be able to have civil discourse with one another. But now with the rage bait and the algorithms, just pushing that out, we're no longer even talking to each other. We're all just kind of screaming at one another, and we don't even want to listen to each other's points of view and have a civil discussion. There used to be a such thing as civil discourse, and it just seems like that is dying right now. And we have to get it back. We have to get we have to teach the next generations coming up. Like, my grandchildren need to know how to how to stand up for themselves and how to debate even and how to have a civil conversation, but also be able to back their conversation up with facts, not just sort of spewing things that they don't really have any real knowledge of, which is what is happening more and more and more. So, we want to strengthen our mental resolve, and that is as much a part of Mind the Mental Monday as everything. In Mind the Mental Monday, we talk a lot about personally, like, ways that we can personally um, tighten up our mental resolve, how we think about what we're thinking, think about our thinking. And so we have to do that in terms of where we stand now in this point in history. Last week, I started a series, which I'll pick up next week, on life seasons. And there are certain seasons, there's a season to reap the harvest, but there's a season to plant. And then there's a season to, water and grow. So there's a season to stand, for justice. And all day long, as I was sort of reflecting on Reverend King, I was just listening to a lot of his like lesser heard speeches and sermons, and just really being contemplative about where is my place in this movement? Where is my place in this social justice movement? Like, I'm thinking about my grandchildren. I'm thinking about my children, but I'm thinking even more about my grandchildren and the what they are going to come up in. And because I want them to be able to have the same kind of resolve that their great grandparents had, um, to whatever their cause was. My dad's cause was to go to the White House and meet with the president at that time, and to go to our city officials who, weren't doing right, or, to stand up and to voice, to his was to run for office. But I'm not him, right? So we all have our place in whatever in this season of social justice, and I'm sort of trying to figure out where mine is. Um, my husband definitely has his place. He's definitely a social justice advocate, and he's sort of out on the forefront in Philadelphia. Um, for me, I think talking, doing things like this, I think, being in prayer. Sometimes I might be involved in demonstrations that come up, that sort of thing. Um, I, you know, I, but I really was thinking about that today. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm all over the place because I'm just so I don't want to say emotional, but just this topic is so important, because I feel like if too many of us just sit by the wayside waiting for somebody else to do something, then nobody's going to do anything, because everybody's just sitting around waiting for somebody else to do it. And so, it's something I've just really been in prayer about with, Lord, where do you want me in this? What do you want me to do? But the thing that is really important is that, we have to maintain our mental resolve in order to be able to do anything. And when we look back on the history of, like, in during the civil rights movement, before they actually went out and sat at segregated lunch counters at Woolworth, before they did any kind of march, before they did any of that, they had months of training, and so they literally had to train um, for having people up in their faces, people spitting at them, people hitting them and beating them. They had to develop that toughness to be able to withstand all of that and not lash back out, right? Because Dr. King's movement was about nonviolence, that one that was adapted from Mahatma Gandhi. And so if you're somebody who has never faced that kind of situation and you go out in the masses and that happens, and you're not really trained in how to deal with it, then that can cause a problem. And so they didn't just kind of willy-nilly jump out there and do the things that they did. They were strategic. They met at somebody's house at the kitchen table, around the kitchen table, right? For months at a time, planning these things. Um, they also had the resolve to not uh be so wrapped up in their own personal convenience. The Montgomery bus boycott lasted for more than a year. So you're talking about a year of them working together, carpooling, walking massive distances and things like that. They sacrificed their own comfort because they knew that this was more than about in that moment. They knew it was more than their generation. This was something that they were doing to sacrifice for the generations that were to come. And so, how dare we benefit from that? And then now it's our time to do that. Some of us can't even, stop going to Target for a day, right? I, I used to be one of the ones last year, and this was even, I started on this even before the official sort of boycott of Target, but prior to that, I mean, it's a Target right down the street. I have a Target within walking distance from my house. And I mean, I used to have the little app, and every week I was getting something on that app. And because I could order what I wanted on the app. I could drive up in the parking lot. Somebody else would bring it out to me. I ain't even have to go in the store. It was so convenient. But convenience is not worth my soul. And so I have also been intentional about, like, I don't use Amazon. And I know people that work, my daughter works for Amazon, right? But I just really try to use other methods. Like I have websites of, like black owned businesses. I try to use neighborhood businesses, small businesses, and support them. Like I really you know for like at Christmas time, I like stopped ordering all that stuff that I'll be ordering. Said I'm gonna put my money. I'm really more thoughtful about where my money goes and who it benefits. So that those are things that are sort of practical things that I can do, that I feel like I have the power to do. And is it hard? It is, because some of the things that I want it's hard to find it somewhere else. It's hard, so I just have to figure out, okay, well, who's got something else that's similar that I can use, or is this something that I really can do without? Um, but continuing to feed these massive um machines, these companies, is is hurting us in so many ways, right? So, now, every once in a while, yes, I might order something from Amazon. So but for the most part, I just am not, because you can become addicted to it too, because it's too easy. It's just too easy to order, and it just comes right to you, right, within a day, sometimes the same day, right? So that kind of thing can be addictive and hard to give up. But when you think about companies like that, the kinds of things that they are funding things um, that'll ultimately destroy us. And so we just have to. So little things like that are things that we can sort of do to become a part of a greater movement. We we didn't have you know, back when there was several Black Wall Streets. It wasn't, people talk about Black Wall Street as if it was just sort of a one and done, but there were several in the country. All of them were destroyed, right? When we come together and we build our own banks, our own schools, our own churches, our own stores, and we are keeping that dollar circulating within our community, there's no stop to what we can do. It is massive. But we've also been taught to be distrustful of ourselves. And so we will stay on Instagram and Facebook, which I'm on right now, and not, go to like a fan base. Now, I've tried fan base. I'm still kind of figuring it out. Um, still kind of figuring it out because it's just fairly new, and I think they're still working through some of their, just like all of these platforms had to do in the very beginning, they all had to work through the kinks, and it's always evolving, right? Technology is always evolving. So I try to give them the same, um, you know, uh, the same, chance that I've given the platforms that we've become accustomed to. Um, but to try to utilize platforms that will actually support us rather than go give their money to people who, are literally trying to get rid of us, is something that we have to be intentional about doing. But we have to be in the right mindset in order to do that. So what is mental fortitude? I've been saying, using that word in this introduction. And so mental fortitude is the strength to keep standing when the system is designed to break you. And that is something that our foremothers and fathers had. I can't imagine, just enduring some of that sort of just in your face, blatant racism, sexism, that they had to deal with. But um, they, they had that strength to keep standing, even in the face of all of the things and all of the struggles that they were going through. And we have to develop that same sort of toughness, that same kind of strength. And strength is not, to me, is not like a violent strength, not a strength of I'm stronger than you, and so I'm gonna beat you up kind of kind of strength, but it's a mental strength. It's a mental toughness. It's the kind of toughness that's needed in sports. Most sports are one here, even way more so than the actual physicality of the play. So it's the same thing. Everything starts in the mind, as I've said over and over again. Everything starts with a thought. So those civil rights moments, back in the civil rights movement, it started with a collective thoughts around the kitchen table, with people talking about, this is what we deserve, this is what we should have the right to do, and these are the tactics, the strategies that we're going to use to try to get there. Did they always agree? They didn't always agree on the strategy. They didn't always. There were a lot of people who didn't care for Dr. King at all. Thought he was just too radical. He was doing too much. But it takes that. Sometimes you got to do too much in order to gain, to get where better leverage in life. You have to do what you're afraid to do. You have to stand when you are afraid to stand. You have to push forward when everything seems to be pushing you back. You've got to try to resist, give that resistance. And it's not easy to give resistance when you're again, it's mentality. think about the what is that called when two groups of people on different sides of a rope, and they're each trying to pull the other one over the line, right? Um, Now you might have more weight on one side, but and the other side might have less weight, but they might have more mental toughness. And the group that has the greatest mental toughness is the one that is going to be able to withstand that resistance the longer, and more. And they're going to be able to eventually get that other group over the line. And so, that's something that we have to think about. Mental fortitude is the capacity to endure pressure without losing purpose. We're going to have to endure some things. We are already enduring some things right now. When we go into different stores, into the supermarket, and we looking at the prices with these tariffs that frankly we are really we are the ones paying for it. We are the ones suffering as a result of these tariffs. The people in those other countries, they don't need us like that, like we think they do, right? And so, but we have to remember that we have purpose, right? And what our purpose is, we have to stay clear-headed in chaos. So while all of these little fires are being started all over the place everywhere, we have to find a way um, to center ourselves. Uh, we have to breathe because when we see all of this stuff happening, it causes anxiety. It's like a collective anxiety. And so we have to sort of be able to, really, really center ourselves and care for our nervous systems in the process of all of this. Um, and we have to keep hope alive. Hope is not it's not a feeling. Like hope is a choice. Hope is a decision. Having hope is something that you decide in your mind that I believe with my whole heart that trouble ain't gonna last always. I believe with my whole heart that my God, his grace and his mercy follows me all the days of my life. I believe in my heart that that the Lord is my shepherd, right? The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. I have to believe that with everything in me. I believe that, right? And so we have to believe that we are who God says that we are. We have to believe that we're made in God's image. And so we deserve any as much rights as anybody else on this earth. When, and we have to understand that people who who have hatred toward us, they have hatred toward the God in us. It doesn't matter if they're calling themselves Christian. Helen Weathers, hey cousin Helen. She says 5 or more years before Target abandoned DEI, she stopped shopping there after they allowed credit card data to be stolen from their computer system. Yeah, yeah. I stopped shopping there like before the main boycott started happening. Um, because and it takes discipline. It was hard. I'm not gonna lie. In the beginning, it was hard. I deleted that app from my phone. I deleted Chick-fil-A app from my phone because first of all, it's not healthy, right? Um, but I also know who they support. I also know the policies that they support. Hobby Lobby. I used to love Hobby Lobby, but I know the policies that they support. And while they claim to be Christian and they sell a lot of Christian focused things in their store, the policies that they support are anti-Christ. And so, no, I don't shop at Hobby Lobby. Um, in all of these places, whether they call themselves Christian or not. Look where they spend their money, and that tells you who their God is. So, I'm sorry. I didn't want trying to get this riled up because I really just I want to celebrate the legacy of Dr. King, but I also understand that I'm his legacy. And if I don't speak up, I'm not doing my job, right? But even before Dr. King, I'm the legacy of Jesus the Christ, who stood up to the powers that be, who was killed, uh, as whose death was as much spiritual as it was political. Um, I am the product of, God who's on the side of the oppressed. That's who my God is. Jesus walks with everyone, and he had compassion for everyone, especially the downtrodden, especially the poor, especially those who are in most need. Those are the ones that he stood for. He said he didn't. A hospital is for the or is not for the well, not for the ones that already got everything. No, I'm here. I'm the doctor for those who are in need, right? And so, Helen also says moral principles need to be enforced at the economic level of our communities. Absolutely. And we can still we have in our DNA what we need to continue to build Black Wall Street. Now, Wall Street now it's not so much brick and mortar anymore, but it's online. That's where our Black Wall Street is. So we need to be developing our own, just as in the case of fan base, we need to be developing our own tech, our own platforms, our own social media platforms. We need to be developing our own businesses where we're able to market on online. Like we have to take accountability for ourselves and for our future. We became much too complacent when we got a right to go eat in certain restaurants and shop in certain stores. We became complacent. We thought we arrived. We can eat with everybody else and we can shop, but now the dollars that were once circulating in our communities are now circulating in everybody's community except ours. We're the ones wearing all the big name brands. We're the ones being walking billboards for people who have said that they don't make their clothes for us. But we're the ones buying it. We're the ones that are giving them the most advertisement for free. In fact, we are paying to give them advertisement. And that is a mindset, right? That is one of the things that Dr. King was assassinated not only for the stance he was taking against the Vietnam War at the time, but at the same time he had the Poor People's Campaign, and he was galvanizing poor people from all racial backgrounds. Because this really is not about race. The reason that it is about race is because it's just easier when you're trying to establish these class systems. It's easier to do based on skin color because that's the most noticeable. But before, before doing it based on skin color, it's usually based on socioeconomic status. And so, poor people are poor people, regardless of what color they are. They're poor people. They are in need of help. They are in need of assistance. And that assistance can come in the form of financial, but it can also come in the form of just education, of just mentoring, of teaching, of just as of helping them to come up, right? And so we have to be aware of all of these types of things that are causing us um to remain be in a situation where we are constantly being dictated to about what we should do and how we should do it. We are constantly accepting the negative stereotypes about ourselves that are not true. We even follow, I was telling my husband earlier, and I work for an Ivy League institution, but I'm not impressed with Ivy League institutions. They have all of the money that they need to give the best of everything to their students. They were started by the same people who came up with the systems that are in place right now. So, you know, that's not impressive to me. I'm sorry, and I hope I'm not offending anybody with that. It's not impressive to me because you've got all the money, you've got all the resources. You should be doing really great things because you have you know what I mean? Like, but those, HBCUs, which I'm a product of, that turn out judges, that turn out local politicians in different cities and towns all across this United States. I'm impressed by that because they started from nothing to get to where they are. That's where we come from. We should be proud of that. That is a part of our mental resolve. I come from greatness. And as my husband's company is called Bound for Greatness because I come from greatness. First of all, again, I come from my creator whose image I am made in, right? I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. So, yeah, I mean, because I come from greatness, I'm bound for greatness. But it's a mentality that we have and that we have to instill in our children. You come from greatness. You're not lazy. What lazy person do you know that's going to work fields for hours, 12, 16 hours a day in the hot sunshine, build this country from the ground up? Now that's not laziness. We must bloom where we grow. Yes, Sister Helen, Cousin Helen. Yes, we must bloom where we grow. We must bloom where we are planted. And like I've said before, not everybody is going to be a Dr. King. But what is your place in the movement? Where are you planted? Where are you taking root? Because wherever you're planted, you have to take root. Because in order to blossom, in order to produce fruit, you have to first root. You have to first be deeply rooted in God first and foremost, deeply rooted in your community, so that we can blossom in the ways that we are not only called to, but that we have the capacity to do. We cannot give up. We cannot give up. We must maintain our hope, but our hope has to be backed by action. Faith without work is dead. And I don't know about you, but I serve a living God. My God is not dead, He is alive. And because I serve a living God, I can help my community to live. So, wherever you're planted, encourage somebody in your household, in your community, encourage them to vote, to march, to speak out and speak up, whatever it is that they are able to do with what they have. We must use what we have. And when we combine resources, when everybody puts their little piece together, it becomes a huge piece. and it becomes something that we can use to collectively grow and strengthen ourselves. We can use the principles of Kwanzaa, which is not a replacement for Christmas or any other holiday. It is a holiday that focuses on collective principles that we as African Americans can utilize to grow ourselves and to grow ourselves stronger. Because some people think that it's like, yeah, I celebrate. I don't celebrate Kwanzaa. I celebrate Christmas. It's You can celebrate both. It's a both and. Um, I think a lot of people don't understand that. They think for some reason that that's something, I don't know, that to swap out. We can celebrate the birth of Christ, which is what we utilize Christmas for in the Christian tradition, Christian faith. But we can also celebrate our those principles of, collective economics, cooperative. I don't know them all, unfortunately, off the top of my head. Um, Cooperative economics is really the main thing that we need to do. So here, I want to leave you with this, because I outlined some things, but I kind of I just got into the what I was saying, and so I'm kind of off my little outline. But there are some things that I do want to bring out, um, ways that we stay sane, strong, and engaged in a hostile system. So one is mental discipline. Guard what you consume. I was at our young adult Bible study. We were just talking about that. We were talking about, how to guard our minds, and it starts with what we are allowing to come in. And I'm going to talk a little bit more in just a second about that. Spiritual grounding, because best understand and believe this, that these battles that we're fighting right now are spiritual, right? This is a spiritual battle. So for those of us who are people of faith, we have to understand that. And so we must be rooted and grounded and prayed up consistently and intentionally. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for the pulling down of strongholds. Right? So we got another army that's fighting on our behalf. So it's not just this carnal battle that we've got going on. It's not just these battle of these ICE agents running around, kidnapping people and beating people up and raping and all that, pillaging people. It's not just about that. This is a battle on a spiritual playing field as well. So we've got to be girded up in our faith and in our resolve. Emotional regulation. Don't let outrage control you. Don't fall for that rage bait stuff. If you're online, if you're in social media, and you all in the comments, and or something, you say something and somebody comments something negative. I've had people say, put negative comments or something I've commented, usually not on my platform, but on somebody else's. I might make a comment and somebody will come at me, and I always just diffuse it, and then they don't know what to do or what to say. It's like, it might even be a bot or something. It's like, you're not getting me like that. I'm not getting wrapped up like that in your rage. No, I'm gonna stay. I gotta do. We have to stay. Um, we have to stay centered, right, and mindful. We have to stay sober, because when we are not sober, when we are drunk, whether it's drunk with wine or whether we're drunk with pride, all the other things that we can be drunk with, that's when the enemy can really come in and attack our minds. So we have to have emotional regulation. We've got to maintain community connection. We got to check on each other, y'all. Check on your neighbor. Who is your neighbor? Everybody. Everybody you come in contact with. It could be a total stranger. You could be out the supermarket in line and somebody in line, you can just say, "Hey, how are you? How are you doing? How are you managing with all the things that are going on? How are you coping?" You know, check on one another. Um, Historical memory. Y'all, Solomon said it, there's nothing new under the sun. So this stuff that's going on now is not new. So we have to understand that the history when we're reading, um, even when we're reading in different biblical texts, we can see it's like, oh, sometimes some of the biblical texts read just like the news today, like really. So understand that the same God who got them through is the same God that's going to get us through. We got to play our part in it. The battle is the Lord's, but we are soldiers in it, and we have a part to play. But the thing that can help us, those of us in the Christian faith, is knowing that we already got the victory. It's a fixed fight. It's already won. So even when I see all of the things that are happening, it's like I'm like, you know what? Okay, this looks crazy, right? It looks like a lot of craziness going on, but I know the battle is already won. It's fixed. And so, just believe in that. Rest and get some rest. Rest can be a form of resistance, right? Because one of the things that the enemy wants is for us to be just getting all just at each other's throats and riled up, and we're getting sick inside. Th- and we're getting burnt out in the process. So take some time to rest. Um, all right. And then the last thing that I want to talk really quickly about is just some practical um just mental health strategies that we can use in such a time as this. So some tools that we might use, one is media fast, like fasting from social media. My kids are really good at that. They will delete an app in a minute and just like go without being on social media for a month. Um, Thought audits, as I've talked about a lot, is really thinking about your thinking, really assessing for yourself where you are mentally, and is there anything that you need to do about it? Do you need a therapist that you can kind of get out all the angst and things that you might be feeling in this time? Is there a family member or a spiritual leader that you feel comfortable with, that you can give yourself a way to get things out? Um, you know, Doing something that anchors you in your faith, prayer, s- studying the scriptures, journaling, walking, breathing. We've done a lot of that about that, but taking a walk, just going outside, even when it's cold, even if it's just for like 5 minutes, right? Just to remember, I think what going out in nature really helps us to do is recognize our connection with it. Like our creator created this entire universe and everything in it, of which we are one. And everything that he created is connected. And sometimes when you're out in um outside in the elements, and just in nature, you just you see how much you need each other. Like the earth needs us um to take care of it, because it takes care of us. It's cyclical. Yeah, our food is comes from the earth. Like we have to realize how connected we are, to each other, but also to everything around us. Um, and I believe God created us that way intentionally, and that we have to be thoughtful about it. Choosing when to engage and when to rest. Listen, there's a season for everything. Sometimes it might be your season to fight, but some battles ain't yours to fight. It's just not, right? So choosing which battle to fight and what your position is in the battle. Sometimes your position might be as the commander, and other times your position might be the person who provides the troops with water and food. All equally important. Doesn't mean you're less than or greater than. It just means, as Sister Helen said, this is where you're planted. But it's all going to come together for our good, right? If we love the Lord and if we're called according to his purpose. Um, so that's all I have tonight. I found this quote, but I'm not sure who it actually is from, but it says, Dr. King didn't just have a dream. He had the mental strength to survive the nightmare while still believing in the dream. And that's where we are. Like it feels like right now we are in a collective nightmare. But we must, with intentionality, make sure we strengthen our minds to a point where we can deal with the nightmare, but we can still walk forward in the dream. Because ultimately, that dream, it will become reality. All right. So stay the course, stay strong, stay encouraged, call your neighbor, check on each other, love, 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 love without condition. And I truly believe the battle is won. We already have the victory. So let's march on. March on, soldiers, march on. March on in faith, march on in hope. Um, and know that, in the words of Kendrick Lamar, we're going to be all right. All right. All right. So, blessings to everybody. Happy Martin Luther King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And let's not just practice some of the things that he taught us, um, on the day that has been set aside to celebrate him, but just like we should be doing in our faith, we need to be showing Jesus every day, every single day. And this needs to be, he's just a part of our DNA. It's just what we do. It's just how we live. Our church motto is we're not just a name, but we are a Christ-centered lifestyle. It is just what we exude. It's just what we do. And so I hope that this encourages you to stay strong, to get in the fight wherever you're planted. And yeah, let's pray for one another and keep each other strong. All right. Love you guys. Have a wonderful night. God bless you. And Lord willing, in the creek don't rise. I'll see you next week. Bye.